Buongiorno, cuore di cioccolato. So today I'm going to be demonstrating for you how I do my simple at-home espresso. So it may not be the traditional Italian technique, but in my opinion it does turn out quite well. And at least if you live in an area like I do where it's not as common to find a good espresso, it's very rewarding to be able to do at home and enjoyable as well. So I hope you enjoy. Thank you again for all your videos. And let's jump in. I'll show you everything you need to do to get started. Okay, so here is everything that we will need for making a good espresso. So we'll start with the espresso press itself, which we'll actually use to pull the shots. This particular machine, in my opinion, is probably the most affordable or value for making a good espresso. One of these, it costs about $120 right now for a basic model. So going along with this machine, we have our brew head, our pressure chamber. You can see this is where our espresso will come out of. And actually jumping into the ingredients themselves, we have 15 grams of Arabica coffee beans roasted, a little bit of milk because I will make a cappuccino today, and of course a tamp for pressing. And I will show you how all these things work to make a wonderful at-home espresso. And I almost forgot, we'll need a coffee grinder as well. And while you can use a manual one, today I'm going to use an electric one just to speed up the process some. As we know, good espresso is the product of a freshly ground coffee bean and also heat and pressure. So we'll want about 0.75 liters of water at 100 degrees Celsius. So here's our first step. Add our water to the bowl, and we'll put the chamber that we will brew our coffee in the water so that it can start to retain the heat. We'll also put our other components in as well. While our espresso machine, our brew head, is coming up to temperature, we can go ahead and grind our 15 grams of coffee beans. And like I said, you can always use a manual grinder as long as it is capable of grinding the coffee very fine. So in this case, you could see the scale of coarseness for coffee grounds. We are here at 2 for a very fine grind setting, and this will ensure that we are able to make espresso. Otherwise it does not work. So with our coffee ground, and let me show you the coarseness quickly, so you can see it's very, very fine, to the point where if you move it on your finger, it actually even kind of stains your finger. So now that our coffee is ground, we can add it to our portafilter that goes onto our espresso machine, and I'll show you that now. So that's this guy, and this is just a dosing funnel to help get the espresso in the filter. So there we go. We have our coffee added to the portafilter. So now that the coffee is in the portafilter, our next step is to focus on the pressure aspect of making the espresso. So we'll want to use our tamp to push down or tamp the espresso in our portafilter so that it can create enough pressure when we pull our shot. And this is where practice kind of makes perfect, because the pressure that you push down with your tamp is quite important. What I was doing just now too is making sure that it is flat. The coffee is flat. So now I'll actually go ahead and tamp the coffee. There we go. So there's what it looks like after it's tamped. It's nice and packed. We've created a very fine filter for our hot water to work its way through and brew our espresso. So next we will assemble the portion of our espresso machine called the brew head so that water can pass through. So the first thing we want to do is to add this screen, this metal screen, to the top, and this ensures that the water flows through the coffee evenly. This is why you might want to spend more money on a quality coffee press, because a lot of the cheaper coffee machines, they don't allow the water to flow evenly through this filter. And if that happens, the coffee becomes disturbed and you wind up with a more acidic coffee, a more bitter taste, instead of an espresso that's very full-bodied with lots of chocolate and other enjoyable notes to it. So we'll go ahead and we'll assemble the actual brew head. Okay, so now we can go ahead and add our water at 100 degrees C to our brew head. We put our final piece, well, almost our final piece, onto the brew head chamber, and we'll top it off some with water as it starts to soak in to the coffee. And there we go. We are now ready to add this to our machine and pull our shot of espresso. One other thing I forgot to mention was that while you are assembling your brew head, it's important to add water at 100 degrees C to the cup that you plan to enjoy your espresso from. As espresso is not a high quantity of liquid, the temperature of your cup will influence the temperature of your espresso. And we all would like to have a warm espresso, so it's important to keep everything warm during this process. And now for the fun part, actually pulling the shot of espresso. So we're going to add our pressure gauge, which is actually very convenient as it tells us which pressures to brew espresso at the top. And really what I find works best is to try and get as close to 9 bars of pressure right here as possible. So add that to our brew head and add it to the machine. And we can now pull our espresso shot. And now we have espresso. As this process took a little bit longer with the recording in between, we can see our shot was a little bit easier to pull. So given the grams of coffee, the weight of the coffee that I used, 15, we ideally want to be pulling our shot at 9 bars of pressure for roughly 30 seconds of time. And that is how we will know that we are making a very perfectly made espresso. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'll be making a cappuccino out of this particular espresso shot. And a couple of things I wanted to note before to let you know if you've done a good job pulling your espresso shot. is a layer of crema at the top. You could see this particular shot did not have as thick of a layer of crema, just due to the amount of time that the coffee was able to brew in the brew head without pressure. And this was my own fault as I was editing and making the video. So we'll move on now to some other tips to help improve the flavor of our espresso. And the first one is to oxygenate our espresso. This will allow more flavors to shine through and allow for a more bold, rich taste to our espresso. There's also a good step to mix in your sugar, which I've also added a little bit of. And now we'll also do this with the milk, which is what this tool is actually for. It is called a milk frother. So this is our little glass of milk, and it is heated to 70 degrees Celsius, which is the maximum you can heat the milk before it changes. So we'll go ahead and we'll make our milk partly foam and partly milk. Okay. And now we can make our cappuccino. No fancy latte art here either. So I hope you enjoyed the video. This was just to help inspire content for your channel, and I was happy to share with you. And also one other thing, another recipe, just for inspiration and also to share good food, and what I'm enjoying this cappuccino with is Brazilian brigadeiro, or a chocolate truffle that goes excellent with coffee and really just about anything. Take care.